to Drunk Dog Creations. Today I'm going to show you a new card layout I've designed that's a double mat on the diagonal. So it adds a little bit of interest to what we would normally do with a mat. A normal mat, even a double mat, would be right on top of each other. But these mats are going to be offset on the diagonal, so you get two different colors around your main card front. So for this card today, you can see I've got 4 cardstock colors out. I've got the basic white thick, I've got the balmy blue, and the pebbled path, which are colors in the new in colors for 2023 to 2025. And I've got the blueberry bushel, just a scrap piece of it for the sentiment. For our stamps, we're going to use blueberry bushel, pebbled path, and boho blue. And of course, we're going to use some Versamark because we're going to emboss our sentiment. The stamp set I'm using for today is Waves of Inspiration stamp set. And this is a really versatile set that you can use for all sorts of things. But today I'm going to do a card with this sentiment: your strength is an inspiration. So to start with, let's have a look at the cardstocks that we need. So the card base, and this is Australian measurements. In the blog, I'll put the American measurements, but we're making an Australian A6 card, which means your card base is 148 millimeters wide by 105 millimeters tall. It's scored in the middle at 105 millimeters and then folded to make your card base. We also have the card front, which is 128 millimeters long by 85 millimeters wide, and another piece of white cardstock for writing on the inside of the car, which is 138 centimeters long by 95 millimeters wide. So that all comes from one piece of white cardstock, and I've used basic white thick. Then in the balmy blue, or whatever color A is going to be for you, you have, for one of the mats, it's 133 millimeters tall by 90 millimeters wide. And then for an inside mat, just to add a bit of extra interest to the card, is going to be 143 millimeters long by 100 millimeters wide. Now, because your card base is white, when you open it, you don't need to do either of the inside mats. This is an optional extra, and it would sort of be your normal layered mat look. And the reason I do that is because the front is quite heavy once we layer things up, so this balances the weight of the card and helps it stand up, but it also adds a little bit of visual interest to the inside. You are welcome to leave those two pieces out and just write on the inside of the card. And then we have a pebbled path piece, and this is also 133 millimeters tall by 90 millimeters wide. And this is color B. This is the lower mat. And then you have a scrap piece, which I've done in Azure Afternoon to go with the stamp that we're going to do in a minute. This is just 2.5 centimeters by 6 centimeters, and it's just cut with your paper trimmer. This is not a fancy label or anything, and you'll see why when we get to that part. So we're going to start with the card front and stamp our main image. And I'm going to take on stamp block F, which is the largest block, I'm going to put the wave stamp. And I'm going to ink it with blueberry bushel to give it that beautiful deep blue color. So I'm going to get that all inked up, just tap, tap, tap. Now, as you can see, the image of the wave doesn't go right to the edge of the stamp, and I want these edges right on the edges of the paper. So when I put the stamp down, I shouldn't line this part up with the edge of the paper, but offset it a little so that I get the whole stamp covering the bottom of the paper. So I'm going to turn this over, and instead of lining it up like that, I'm just going to bring it slightly down and over, just slightly. And then I'm going to place that down, give it a little press, and lift. And you can see that there's a smidge at the side, so I'll trim that off after. If it's only a little bit, it's okay, but if it's too much, it won't line up as well with the others. Now I'm going to give this a little bit of a clean. I don't need to clean all of the ink off, just most of it, because I'm now going to overstamp this with another color, the boho blue. Ideally, you would be doing this with a stamping platform, but Stampin' Up, which had the amazing Stamparatus, has discontinued it. I've heard because Misty thinks that their copyright means no other company can make anything similar. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what I've heard. So I'm still going to try to do this by hand. And with this image, it doesn't matter if it overlaps or is offset slightly. It's okay. Or if there's still some of the other ink on it. So I've got my boho blue, and I'm going to very lightly, I don't want a whole lot of ink on this. I just want a little bit on there to give a little bit of depth to this image with the lighter color. So the light and dark together give it a bit of contrast. So I'm going to try to line that up as best I can and really try to get as close as you can to the actual one you've just done. A light press, and you can see that's lined up well. It's doubled it or mirrored it just a little bit, but because it's such a light color, it just adds a little to the image, and that's the effect I want. The next thing I'm going to do is take an H block with the pelican stamp on it, and I'm going to ink this with the Pebbled Path. So just tap and get the Pebbled Path on it. I'll leave it open because I am going to use it again. And I want to get the pelican near the right side of the image. And I want it, the bottom of it, to overlap a little with the blue. It'll look weird, but it's going to be covered by the sentiment, so it's okay. So I'm going to take the pelican and just overlap a little and press. And it looks like the pelican is facing the wave and that the wave is about to crash into him. The last thing I'm going to do is take this little tiny flying bird stamp on an A block. And again with my Pebbled Path, just going to tap it. You have to be quite careful because this one is really easy to get the edge on the paper. And so sometimes I'll just take a cloth and take that edge off and then do a very light, like hardly touch it, to try and keep that from happening, and very lightly touch it down, barely touching the paper, in a little triangle of flying gulls. If you press too hard with these little blocks, you will get the ink from this edge around it. So you've got to press very lightly. And I can put my Pebbled Path away. So that's it for the stamping of the main image. And you can put anything you want on the front of this, absolutely anything you want. So this next step is how we create the matted diagonal. So I've let this dry just a little bit, and I've decided for the horizontal card, I usually split them top right and bottom left. I'm also going to include directions for a vertical card, and those I would usually do top right and bottom left, and there'll be some samples for you to see as to why. But the first thing I'm going to do is align things to the top right card. So I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to get my Stampin' Seal out, and I'm going to do the seal on all four edges of the card front. Tiny bit in the middle. And how this lines up, and what makes this, what seems complicated, easy, is you line the bottom corner to the bottom corner, and the left edge and the bottom edge should completely align, not over it, not under it, just absolutely straight. Wiggle it a little till it's right, and that forms your first mat. So you can see left and bottom edge aligned to the mat. It's not sticking out, it's not overlapped, it's just right. And then what you're going to do is turn this over, and we're going to do some lining up this way. So what I want to do is put the tape on the back, where the white is, but not where the blue is yet. So you want to kind of eyeball that and keep the tape a little bit just like that, and a little in the middle. And what I'm going to do now is that where the white meets the blue and where the card front meets the blue there, that's what you want to align to the top and right of your bottom mat. And the same way you did the first, you want that to be very straight, but you want to make sure before you put it down that both line up. So I've got to wiggle it a little and make sure it's straight and aligned. And when it is, you put it down and touch it. And there you have a double mat that is a diagonal of 2 different colors with a little corner notch cut out in each side. So that when we put it on the card front, which we'll do next, it forms an interesting double mat diagonal. So all you do now is put your Stampin' Seal and make sure it goes over both. See if I can do this at this angle. I'll come around again. Around, and here I make sure it's over both the gray and the blue. Same with here. And a little in the middle. And then you want to line this up so that there's sort of an even white space all the way around. Which may mean, see, that's a little bit off, so just lift and wiggle until it's about even. Press it down. And your card front is ready, sort of. Like to get that a little more even. Sometimes if you try to get it too perfect, you end up not getting it really good. So I'm gonna just put that down. And then that's your basic card made. But now I'm going to do a sentiment. So I'm going to take this little piece of blueberry bushel paper, and the sentiment's going to be heat embossed on it and trimmed if it needs to be, and it will go there. So it will cover where these 2 stamps overlap, which is why you didn't have to be too particular about it. So in order to do that, I'm going to use Versamark. And I'm going to use the H block again and use the sentiment stamp that says your strength is an inspiration. And I'm going to get my embossing tools. So I've got my white embossing powder. Take the lid off that. I've got my paper, I don't know what to call this. This is like a resin pad, and you dot the paper with it, and it takes all the static away so that the embossing powder only sticks to the Versamark and not other parts of the paper. You have a brush for brushing mistakes and for the tray, and these are heat-resistant tweezers to hold it while you use the heat tool. And then when you're done, you just tap it out the bottom here back into the little bowl. So it's a great little set. So the first thing I'm going to do, though, is just rub my anti-static pouch. That's the word I'm looking for. Rub my anti-static pouch on what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to tap this into my Versamark, which has something on it. Tap the stamp into the Versamark ink. And then I'm going to, this is where I love grid paper. I'm going to line this up. So this side is inches and this side is centimeters. It's perfect. And I'm going to try to get my stamp right in the center. And I'm going to use the tweezers for this. Bring it over here. I'm going to put my white embossing powder over it. Maybe I'll just pick it up. And I tend to flick the back a couple times, which should knock loose stray pieces. And if you do have a little bit stuck where it shouldn't be, You can give it a tiny brush with the brush, or even with a really thin paintbrush if you've got a really delicate spot. Aside. I'm going to grab this with the heat tweezers because I'm about to use the heat tool and there's not a lot of room to hold this that wouldn't get your fingers burnt. So I'm going to use the heat tool, which ideally you would heat up for 20-30 seconds before using. And then I'm just going to let it do its magic, not too close to the paper, not on one spot too often, otherwise you burn the cardstock. And you do it just till you see that transformation happen, and then you stop and don't go any further because it'll burn it. So that's my sentiment done. So then I'm going to take some dimensionals, and I'm going to, they're like foam dots, so like foam tape, but dots, and they're really easy to get off here. And I'm just going to put a couple on here. Sometimes I use tweezers. And their shape means they're really easy to work with. I love these. They come in mini and black as well. I love them. So I've got my dimensional dots, and I'm just going to peel these off. Turn my sentiment over. Grab my card. And the sentiment is going to line up exactly with that corner. So this edge, the right edge and the bottom edge are going to line up exactly with the right edge and bottom edge of the card front, still leaving the matting. And you just put it down, and there you have a basic card, except for the ink smudges. Sorry about that. Like I said, you can leave the inside clear. There's no harm in that. Or you can layer the boho blue using your Stampin' Seal, and some basic white, and write your sentiment on the inside. And I'll do that a bit later. What I do want to show you, however, is how to make this pop just a little bit more. So I'm going to put my stamps away, and I'll be right back. All right, so this is an optional extra step, and I'm going to be using the Stampin' Blends alcohol markers, because if you're using the Stampin' pads, then you can color over it with the alcohol markers and not diffuse the stamp. Whereas if you use the Stampin' Write markers, it will blend with the stamped ink and could cause some changes. So what I want to do is add a little bit of color to the pelican, including like an orange beak and feet. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the dark pumpkin pie Stampin' Blend, and I'm going to use the writing side rather than the brush side because it's really delicate work. And I'm just going to put a very fine bit of color where the beak is and where the feet are. Just a tiny pop. That's all I'm going to do there. And then I'm going to take the light pebbled path, and I'm going to use the brush side, and I'm just going to put a little bit of the light along the top. And then I'm going to take the dark pebbled path on the brush side and do it over that a little bit. And then bring it down the rest of the feathers, just through there. And then go over it again with the light to kind of blend them together a little. Just adds a darkness to the body. And then I'm going to take the light crumb cake, and I'm going to go over the head a little bit, just the light crumb cake. I'm not going to blend this one, and just give the head some depth. And then you've got a pop of color. You could even put a little rhinestone or a little sequin on the eye to make it stand out more. So that's one way you can embellish it, is with the Stampin' Blends. It's just an optional extra. The other optional extra, if we want to step it up a little, is to add some ribbon. I've got here the wavy trim in natural. This comes as part of the Earth and Elegance suite, but is also sold on its own. I'm going to pop one piece of it there on the pillar and slide a little under there and just do a little strip there. So all I'm going to do is cut off just to the left and just to the right of the join, so that I've got just one piece. And I'm going to use a glue dot. These are the mini glue dots. I love these. And I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool and pull one glue dot off of here. It doesn't matter in this case if it waves. And I'm just going to put it right there and take this one little piece and just put it there. And then I'm going to just do a line straight out from the sentiment to the end of the card. And I'm going to slip this kind of, again, using your Take Your Pick. I'm going to just slip this under so that just fiddle with it a little bit and put it on the glue to the very end and just snip it and press it down. And that just gives it that little bit of extra pop. And if there's extra glue, then you can take a glue eraser to take it off. You can also use glue. You can use any sort of adhesive you want to put it down. So that just elevates the card that little bit. So that is the double offset or diagonal mat. So I also wanted to show you a couple other examples of this card, both vertical and horizontal, with some other colors and some other stamp sets to give you an idea. So this first one is a With Gratitude card. It's made with the Moody Mauve and the Pebbled Path from the new 2023-2025 in colors. There's a few of the others. There's the Copper Clay for the branches, and there's the Pretty Peacock for the palms. This set, which is this one, is stamps and dies that, as you can see, give you different pots and different textures and flowers and things that you can do. This lid fits on both those pots if you cut that one down. Like, it's a really versatile set, and it's one I featured a bit lately because I really love it. So this is done with Earthen Textures, or the Earthen Elegance suite, which includes some really interesting DSPs. But as you can see, this card is vertical and the mats go top right and bottom left, and that makes a really nice card. I also recently got some stamp sets on clearance, so if you like these, you can be quick. Now, okay, I'm in Australia. I've been living in Australia for 30-something years, but I was born in America, so I have a lot of family and friends over in America, so I do send American Thanksgiving cards. But the great thing about these two stamp sets is they have other sentiments that make them useful for non-American holidays as well. But these were some samples that I made up of this style to see if I wanted to make them into Thanksgiving cards. So as you can see, one is horizontal, one is vertical. This is Cajun Craze and Pumpkin Pie, and this is Wild Wheat from the 2023-2025 in colors with Cajun Craze. And these are the two stamp sets. They're on clearance right now at a great price. This is Painted Pheasant, and while it says Happy Thanksgiving, there's also Grateful, so it can be a thank you. There's a pleasant little note that can be generic, and it has these little leaves and the little branches, and that's that set and how it comes. And from that, I did this. Now, I stamped the pheasant in early espresso color, and then I colored it in with the Stampin' Blends alcohol markers in Light and Dark Pumpkin Pie and in Light and Dark Daffodil Delight for the yellow. And I used a tiny little yellow crystal I had for the eye. And of course, I stamped the leaves in Cajun Craze, and I stamped this in Wild Wheat. So it all kind of goes together. And instead of white, I used Very Vanilla for the card base and the front. And as you can see, this was a sample that I was playing with. It's not meant to be used in a video or given away because I had ink all over my hands, which happens, and smudged it, which I try very hard not to do. this one is with another set called Soft Seedlings. And this is a beautiful stamp set, again on clearance. So if you like it, be really quick. It's not specifically Thanksgiving, but the leaf kind of gives that appearance. It says, thinking of you, so grateful, for you, and hello. So it's a really good everyday stamp set. And as you can see, again, I used Fairy Vanilla for the base and the front. I used Pumpkin Pie and Cajun Craze. I stamped it in Cajun Craze, the sentiment and the leaf. But then I used the Light and Dark Daffodil Delight and the Light and Dark Pumpkin Pie Stampin' Blends, alcohol markers, to add a little bit more color. And again, the little yellow crystals, and I have to admit they're from my stash. I have no idea what their name is, but Stampin' Up! Has something similar on sale at the moment. These are from about a year ago. They're just some leftover. But just a couple little crystals to give it a bit of extra. And again, the double inside, except I made this one a little shorter just for something extra. And again, this was just a sample, not meant to be sent. So it was like pulled up and restuck several times. But that's Soft Seedlings and Painted Pheasant and the Earthen Elegance, or Earthen Textures for just the stamp set or the bundle. So it gives you an idea of the different things you can do.